right. So let's say you're in a job that you hate, right? And you might want to think, should you be leaving it for a better job? So in an expansion phase, right, during the growth of an economy, there are ever increasing opportunities. So in that sort of circumstance, I might encourage someone who has some savings and has an idea they want to pursue or a job that they want to look for. That prepare to leave your job and look for a position that you prefer. You don't necessarily have that luxury when you're about to enter a recession or like in a recession, as I believe we are right now. The job that you have increases in value now to you based on the fact that you might not be able to easily get another position. Now, I'm not saying you might not be able to apply for a job and get it, but let's say you've been in a position for the last 5 years and you're a known quantity at that job, and you go to another company and you start working there, and then they start being hit, their bottom line starts getting hit, and they have to start laying off people, let's say 6 months into it. Well, now you might be in a first in, first out sort of situation, right? Other people have been there longer, they have more seniority, and they might come above you. So leaving your job at the beginning or while we're in a recession, and certainly going into depression, it's not something you really want to necessarily consider. Any entrepreneurial idea that you have, anything else you want to try, you're going to have to do it alongside what it is you're doing already. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So we talked about in the previous videos about broaden your skill set, and as I was reflecting on it, it occurred to me that some people might not necessarily know, well, how do I choose a new set of skills to complement the skills that I have already? So one of the things that you really want to be considering is there's certain types of jobs that people have. Let's say they're a consultant, or they work with they work in a company that does business specifically with certain industries or sectors. You might consider, sometimes you get locked in, you're like really good with plastic surgeons, or you're really good with the tourism industry. And you sort of get a routine, you have a repartee with that industry. You know the lingo, you know the ebbs and flows, and you become specialized inside of it. But you really want to see yourself as cross-industry. You want to be able to have a skill set or have an intuitive knowledge of multiple different industries, 2, 3, 4 other ones than the ones that you're comfortable with right now. So what does that mean? That means you might pick an industry that you already have a propensity for, some sort of inclination towards. And then you might say, well, how would I market my product and services to this new demographic, to this new industry, to this new sector? And as you do that, you will realize that as you try to actually interact with that new sector, they're going to be asking questions and they're going to be suggesting things or expect things from you that you might not necessarily have. And that'll be an indication of some of the skills that you need to have. So it's not just the nuances of how that industry works, it's not just the lingo and sort of the people, but you're going to understand a little bit more of the conferences that are available there, how they post for their jobs, what criteria they use in order to decide to go with one contractor or another. But you really have to target an industry that you're interested in, or that you believe has growth inside of it, or has opportunity inside of it, and really try to sell yourself to that industry in any way. And then you'll see some of the skill sets that you might want to pick up. What else here? So let's say. Oh, right. Along the same lines, you're going to want to make sure that the industries or sectors that you're thinking of are industries that, if you're going into a recession or you're deep within one, you want to focus on industries that do well in such a circumstance, right? So any companies that rely, let's say, on debt, on being able to get loans in order to finance their growth, that's going to be tough. Like, startups, tech companies, certain types of healthcare companies, and basically any industry where their livelihood depends on the company getting large amounts of money in to then use it for working capital. So, for example, like even real estate companies, if you have a construction company that needs to build something, well, they need to be able to get a loan from the bank. They need to be able to get funders and investors in order to move forward. So those are industries you might not want to target while you're going into a recession or within a depression. But stuff like especially at the bottom of a recession, stuff like consumer staples. So there's certain products and services that people want to use all the time. So one of the classic examples that I was very surprised to know when I started doing any types of investments is that like pest control companies. Control companies, well-run runs, are always in demand because, cockroaches and termites, they don't know that a recession is happening, and they'll eat your house regardless. And so these companies, although there might be less money available within the economy, if a company can lose way more money and way more productivity if they don't address these issues. Same thing with temperature control within a building for heating or cooling. If someone has heating or cooling systems within their building, well, they're going to have to service them. Utilities are the same way. Telephone, electricity, any type of energy. Utility companies are ones that are generally going to be around and might even be subsidized by the government. Some of my favorite ones are, local government. Right? A lot of people don't think about how do I sell my services. Like if I had to go work for the government, either directly as an employee or sell my services to them, how would I go about it? You'd be very surprised how many departments there are that you can actually target. How many of them actually have budgets that are locked in by the government that you can take advantage of. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have certain types of consultant services or certain types of products that you believe might be good from a governmental perspective, don't be afraid to pitch to them. They're always looking for ways to improve what they're doing. I would say just for that though, you want to focus on local governments, right? The smaller the government, the more local. So your city, your province, or state, or then country. Because there's more red tape the higher up you go. And you can also even think about governments from a global perspective. So UN, International Monetary Funds and stuff like that. There are governments in other places that might actually want your skills. I've dealt with the Haitian government, some African governments, some countries in Europe. There's all kinds of agencies that have opportunities for you. So, as an entrepreneur, don't lose out on those. I think that's a pretty good tip. One of the things we'll be talking about over the next few videos is because I'm trying to lay the groundwork for some general information about how to think of a recession and broad strokes of how to look at opportunities. But I really want to talk a lot more about in the next few videos about how do you start a business when you're going into a recession or in the bottom of a recession. So you have to understand that one of the reasons things go so badly especially in our economies. When a recession happens, is that inefficient companies, so companies that are relying on debt and that are not properly managed, these are the ones that get wiped out. Right? These are the ones that lose 20, 50, 80% of their value. Right? And you might think, oh, how can a company lose 80% of the value? Well, look at Japan, look at some African countries. You'd be very surprised what happens. Look at Greece, what happened in 2015. You'd be very surprised to see that there are plenty of times where an entire economy that's based on inefficient practices completely crumble and fall. It's one of the things I've been very passionate about recently, talking to people about that. If you build your company, it doesn't matter how small your company is, it doesn't matter if it's a one-man show or a multinational conglomerate, you can end up, if you don't follow the proper values, if you don't follow the proper format for a company that has a good foundation, it doesn't matter how big you get, you can still crumble. Like you look at a company like GE. That company was the biggest company in the world. Like everyone wanted to work for GE. You had guaranteed pensions. They had fantastic pay. They created all kinds of products that were used all around the world. And now they're a joke. You can barely buy their stock. Like no one thinks about going to work for GE as a job they're going to have for the next 60 years. Stuff like companies that boom in the .com bubble. Pets.com is a classic example of this, where there's a company that grows big, seems to be making all this profit, and all of a sudden closes down. And the reason for this is that they don't follow what I see as 3 specific types of rules. So we're going to be talking a lot about, in the upcoming videos, about these 3 ideas: value, reputation, and transparency. Value, reputation, and transparency. Right? And these are 3 key components that when you're building any type of entrepreneurial endeavor, you want to focus on these 3. And if you focus on these 3 in the proper way, you'll generate growth for your company that'll be stable and will see you to success for many years to come.